All right. I just want to go through my thoughts on how I am trying to help people understand technology and my considerations when attempting to help someone with MS and understanding that MS changes over time and what changes I have seen. So I just want to go through this is like the common problems in late stage MS, firstly. Um, so we're just going to look at so what I'm seeing is I am seeing the walking, I am seeing the standing, and I'm seeing, the moving between rooms and risks of fall. Um, Cognitive and memory loss, I am seeing that. That is happening, and it's not through anything that's within control. It's just part of the process. And so, in understanding that, um, so in this, it says it suggests memory loss, trouble organizing daily tasks, and poor attention. So what I'm looking at there is going, well, how do I future pace the install to reduce any subscriptions and make it as free as possible to for someone with MS to have as much independence as possible for as long as possible. Um, And so this sort of culminates in understanding complex demands. So if you're offering too much information, it can be a bit overwhelming. So I do try and make, even though what I do is complex to configure it all and then recalibrate it as changes happen, I try and make it so it prompts them to do things to make it easier as they wish. Overwhelming exhaustion, even with minority activities, fatigue. So rests and things, I see that a lot. Speech communication and difficulties in some words. So everything I do has a speech component and it has an app component. And so we can connect it to other devices. So one client, he's so late stage that he can't talk anymore and he's just able to move his head. So in that case, I'm able to connect the same things to buttons he can move with his head, or in his case, I'm considering a movement sensor for his head, but then that's just a bit. I can I can do it, but I don't know how it'll work, and so I haven't actually done it yet. But it's considerations. Vision problems, blurred vision, double vision, and partial loss of vision. So configuring the whole system to be usable by voice is excellent, and be able to get information via voice. And these systems are going to get better. Fine motor skills using hands for basic tasks, button clothing, using phones. Okay. So some are having tremors, and the other thing is I call it mashing, where they're instead of just touching the screen lightly, they're mashing. Their hand doesn't stop, and so understanding that and going, okay, well, let's remove the hand situation, so they don't need to do that to get most of the information they need, or control devices and things. Emotional and psychological strain. So I am really trying to work on the independence by considering these things as much as possible as I go. So let's just move to the other thoughts here, my thought train. So this is really research materials in uploaded documents that show for what's happening every day too. So I've done a bit of a look around of what there's a World Health Organization report that discusses falls and how often they happen and stuff. And so I've basically got that World Health Organization report, and I wanted to discover before the fall what happened. And now, so they're saying here the activity is just getting in and out of bed. Pretty reasonable. Muscle weakness, poor balance when standing. I have seen someone just, well, they just lost use of understanding where their foot was, and and that's how what they're saying to me is like they just don't know where things are. It's sort of like a miscommunication within themselves. Walking inside the house, slippery floors, poor rugs, poor lighting, poor clutter. So that's an everyday activity. Using the bathroom, wet floors, wet seats, and this is suggesting the environmental environment there of the house itself. Um, Reaching out or bending, transferring to or from a chair or a sofa. This is just like everyday activity, carrying items, shopping bags, and one-handed, impaired vision, loss of balance, weakness, or rushing. These are all, like you can, I can, I totally understand that every day, like these things just happen. So, activities are pretty general. So getting in and out of bed, walking, using the bathroom, reaching, bending. Okay, so that's the activities and the four risk factors. So if we go across a bit more, so the problem area: mobility impairment, cognitive impairment, fatigue, communication, vision impairment, fine motor skills, and obviously emotional support. So my configurations are voice activated lights and doors and plugs. Now plugs, so if you set up more voice activated things, you can obviously reduce the amount of steps or the amount of attempts to do things that might be considered simple, but if your body's not communicating well, it can have a detrimental effect long term. Meaning, well, suppose I imagine it as if you normally go to flick a switch and then you have a fall or something like that. It's not, it's just a, you know. So the idea of not having to flick the switch is you're preventing the fall, the activity of something that could be, get up to switch the switch on and then fall over or something like this. Um, this says wellness reminders and visual display routines. Now, so what happens when you configure the visual display well is that the the events will come up for the day of when to do it. Now, part of my coaching and onboarding is I'll set up, configure it so it's not a 15-minute reminder, it's actually like an hour reminder before something happens. So, for example, on their device, they would see a notification, dentist, 9 o'clock, and it's actually 8 o'clock. So the person knows, and part of the coaching is when you see that pop up on your phone, stop what you're doing and prepare to go to the dentist, for example. The intention of putting like configuring routines and having the devices is to a couple of clients are put to bed at a certain time and there's a routine, but this helps them get structured day, and so they know and they can look forward to doing things and then be able to re-energize, as you call it. Use of smart displays, Google Duo, FaceTime. I don't really use Duo anymore. That was just bad typing. That was. But the point of this matter is can we get the apps to produce information that would normally be required by the carer, not to get rid of carers. The intention is to, some information is just like, let's say it's what's the weather. Like if a carer is doing the dishes or something and they have to ask what's the weather, the weather outside, da, da, da. It's part of the conversation. You want to talk. I don't want to take that away, but also too, a lot of clients I'm having are independent and live alone. So that, which is really great, but at the same time scary because they're living alone and they want that information. So if someone's there, they could use them. If there's a robot, use a robot. Voice feedback from devices, magnification setting on smart displays. Turning on some of these is a customization. It's all customized, right? But this is a customization, particularly that person's eyesight. So some phones have this great thing where you touch it 3 times and it will increase the size of the magnification on the display. Or we would make the buttons so big on the display that they have less distraction, less distortion on what they're trying to achieve. Simple one-tap control apps, Wi-Fi controlled appliances. So we can also do things like, because we're doing the plugs can also be connected to appliances, and I have done um, certain things that will turn themselves off at a certain time, or I know there's a lot of, because of memory and cognitive issues, there's a lot of anxiety about whether they've left things on, and so having a plug on there, they can sort of check their phone to see whether the power's off to it, which is, I'm finding that the person's finding a benefit, so they're sort of like, well, I'm confident that the toaster's off or whatever, you know. Wellness prompts, music, meditation reminders. You can ask it to play like sea ocean sounds, or meditation sounds and stuff like that. Some I've set up voice calls, but that's another thing, because like video calls, so they can actually sit there and see someone while they're talking. Really handy for telehealth. One client, I set it up so we knew that spot of the house is where she would bring a chair and sit there, and they could do a video conference, and she could answer it without using her hands and be able to be part of the video conference there. All right, back to my thought stream here. It was a bit of a big one, but anyway, thought I'd share it. Number of typical movements. So someone introduced me to time motion engineering, and I didn't know what it was, but it's actually the measurement of processes and how to engineer those processes better. So in mucking around with these things, I was trying to work out how many steps and movement for the process of, for example, turning on the lights. So in this example, walk, walk to switch, raise arm, flick switch. Right? Seems straightforward. But the 12 to 20 steps to turn the light on, and then the upper body reach, like one of my clients' arm just stopped working. So I'm guessing the leg can stop working or something while you're mid-flight of doing something, which can be quite the interesting task. Adjust the thermostat on the wall. Not really thermostat. What I've done with a few devices, smart devices, is I've connected them to the voice controller, so the client doesn't have to go over and try and attempt to, because it seems like it's always the simple thing that turns into the problem. They go turn the light on and fall over, or turn the thermostat and fall over. So this calculation is walk to the wall, or walk or wheelchair or whatever to the wall. That's 15 steps, and then standing effort. Open and close curtains manually. You can just voice control with some curtains, and you can make them. So all of this everyday stuff can be reduced. So this is just one day. You got your lights on, you change the heater, you open the curtains, you check if the door is locked, and you answer the phone. Right, so this is saying check the door is locked, 20 to 40 steps. Answer the landline phone, go over there 30 to 50 steps. So there's a step count and an action to everything. Now, whether those steps, and you make the steps perfectly, it could be blamed on a rug, it could be blamed on this. But from what I've noticed is that the body will just stop communicating. And how are you supposed to measure that? Like, if your feet aren't moving the way they should for half a second, you could fall. It's not carpet's fault, it's actually an internal communication error. So, following on from this, replacing manual tasks with voice commands removes over 80% of physical movements related to basic tasks. Switch on a bedroom light, 15-step arm reach, zero. So manual movements versus the voice activated movements, zero. So it goes from, as you can see there, it goes from steps to no steps. 0 steps. So you're actually reducing the possibility on simple stuff. Like, you're still going to go to the toilet, you're still going to do laundry, you're still going to go to the kitchen, you're still going to do these things. But what if you didn't have to do this extra little movement? So say you're going from the bedroom to the kitchen, you turn the lights on in the kitchen, turn lights on, and then you go to the kitchen and you do your thing, and all the normal stuff, and then you come out the kitchen, you say turn lights off. Now, who can measure whether the turning light on was a fall or not? Let's just reduce it. Let's reduce the possibility of it. So let's. Oh, this is where I went a bit too far. I got a bit excited reading all this. Falls to older adults, especially over 65, major health burden in Australia, according to WHO Global Fall Prevention. The average cost of a fall episode in a person over 65 was 6,500. That's 2002. Okay. Hospital patient service is about 50% of total cost. Long-term care, nursing homes, rehabilitation accounts for 9 to 1.4 to 41% of costs. Okay. Adjusted to today's value, due to inflation, over 20 years, it costs about $10,000 to $13,000 per fall. Okay. I've got no comment with that. Now let's have a look at the rest of my thought train here. So, what causes falls? From the WHO Global Report, 30 to 50% of falls are triggered by environmental factors and movement factors. Walking, reaching, transferring between positions, and that's what we went through in the piece previously. Physical movement, strain, walking, reaching, bending, environmental, wet flow, rugs, wet floors, and bad lighting. When you reduce physical movements, you're targeting the movement-related component of the falls. So the movement-related component of the falls. How much movement can Smart Voice eliminate? Basic tasks, 250 steps per day, which means 80 to 100% reduction in movement and reaching tasks would otherwise require a manual action. Assume movement-related falls account for 40% of falls. Not all of them, just 40%, a midpoint between 30 and 50% from the WHO's documents. If a voice control removes 80% of the risk, then theoretically you can cut 32%. You could reasonably expect a 30 to 35% reduction in falls by using voice-controlled smart devices based purely on movement reduction. Estimated fall reduction 30 to 35%. Okay. So that's sort of like, if we need to get into the numbers, they're the numbers that I've sort of calculated out. These are my numbers from using the stats. Cost of falls to the Australian community. Falls cost older adults, especially people over 60, are a major health burden in Australia. According to the WHO Global Report, the average cost of a fall was 6,000. We just read that. 50% of falls, long-term care, 9. Okay, so done that one again. Okay, national burden estimates, probably what we want to read here. Approximately 30% of Australians over 65 have at least one per year. One fall per year. The direct cost of the health system for related injuries is over $1 billion a year. Oh, God. That's higher than I expected. Indirect costs like loss of productivity of caregivers, early administrations, aged care, mental health strain would cost millions more. So that's on top of. For example, if you just 100,000 serious falls occur per year at an average of $12,000 per incident, that's 1.2 billion in direct health costs alone. So, am I saying that smart tech can reduce the health burden on the health system by 1.2 million a year? I don't know. like that's the numbers, right? Um, but for yourself, if you are considering adding some smart tech to your house, it's well worth doing. Whether you are worried about this number or not, um, it's more about your personal ability to reduce the amount of falls you're having. If you're going from replacing physical movements to doing it with the voice and reduce your steps. And it's not like I know people say, well, you're trying to get to 10,000 steps a day and you're reducing it by 250. This is not good. But there's a case to be said that, a fall where you break a hip or you hurt your face or whatever, it could be as detrimental. And depending on the age, like we're talking about, like some clients that are really having difficulty with the way their body's being consistent in its communications. So I hope this video gives you some ideas on what you could do or the thought process I'm having in my considerations with, well, how am I going to do this? What are the risk factors I'm trying to reduce? And, you know, prevention and necessity. Um, there's no perfect answer, and this is not the perfect thing. I know there are other things coming like a humanoid robot or something like that. I think that's too far. My preference is that someone can live independently for longer. And if you know someone who's in that position, that they would just like, they understand the risk they're in and they're happy to have some supports, maybe this is the way to do it, is to use a bit of this technology to reduce their costs. My recommendation is you just buy it yourself online, um, and then have it configured for you, and get it done right. You can communicate with me. I do have a WhatsApp chat area where you can communicate with me. Um, but a lot of the time I'm in coaching setting this stuff up because it is working and we're getting good results. Um, I wish you all the best. This is just my thoughts on it. This is not, and I am not a allied health professional. I am just an ICT guy, information communication technology. Just want to make sure you can communicate to get things done. Um, I've called the little term ecothesis, like prosthesis. Eco meaning home. So the home does the works like a robotic part almost. So think about it. This is the small version I've given you. There's a whole heap of other stuff I've done, but I just wanted to keep it simple simple as I could. And I wanted to see you to see my thought train of how I've worked through how I'm future pacing things and reducing costs over the long term. Um, Whether I save the government 1.2 billion, that's another story. Okay. Have a great day. And if you need my help, you'll find me in the ecothesis.com website, and you can find me there and communicate. I wish you all the best.